it's, well,
I won't support that whole.
yeah, and that's perfectly within your boundaries. Yeah.
By no means an emergency though.
Nope, I
Well, that's the
agree.
thing.
It's by no means.
Well,
But they put a renter in there.
Right, but the only, when
Now we
you
got
say
emergency.
emergency, that's the only way to get in,
To get it done.
to get to the
Right.
next phase. You have to, under an emergency situation.
Whoever the developer, a buyer, or a new homeowner is, they move in. And, they could easily make it an emergency. I think they could, and then we're back here having the same discussion again.
Only
I
it's
agree.
worse because somebody's suffering.
Yeah. Well, that's depending on who it is. Could be a tenant, or could be the person, or whatever. I think they could make it worse problem.
You don't have that overhanging over your head now.
The emergency
There's
clause.
not a tenant coming to the director of health saying, my system's failed, and unless we get hooked up, I'm gonna sue the landlord or the town. You know what I mean?
Right.
You don't have that issue now. There's no.
Well, we've had
there's-
cases where people have been in nursing homes,
Right.
and they sold the house, and they had the same problem.
But-
These houses are gonna sell, eventually every house is gonna sell at some point. I mean, at some point, we all don't live forever or stay in town forever.
Did you get any feedback from DPW?
No, they had, Dan Smith had just wrote a note saying, possibly you can get there by gravity. But the cost of trying to do that compared with putting that didn't really make any sense. Besides that, that was the only, I talked to Bob, and he didn't really have a problem,
See, some of these people went, these people went back that way to Shadwell. Some of these people.
no, it's all, this house goes to here, these house goes to the sewer manhole right over here. This house goes into there also.
I thought some people went back to
No.
Shadwell, no?
No,
I thought some-
no, they're all tied into the sewer
Maybe
manhole.
Shadwell came this way.
Yes.
What happened?
Yeah.
Okay.
We just did a couple of those not too long ago, didn't
That Shadwell
I guess if this person does this, and then these people look to do this, are they gonna, can they tap into that
They
Only
can,
with permission?
yeah, they can tap into this, right,
with permission from the person who owns it?
right, yeah.
Yes, yeah, and is this, because this is not on their property, this isn't deed restricted, so if there's if this thing bursts,
Yeah.
who's responsible?
The homeowner.
But my problem is that these people can't tap into that.
Well,
And so next thing you know, you have 5 of these coming down the street, go into this manhole.
Well, it's
but
not that they
that's it.
can't. It's up to make a deal.
Right.
they? And then that might be out of our realm too.
Oh, they would be.
Yeah, that's a sure.
I don't care whether they have a deal or not. What I care about is then you're redoing, then you're coming down the street 5 more times.
Well, no, like I say, they can tie into the line. It's a matter
No,
of.
they can't.
Well,
Unless
they-
there's with permission, so
Right.
they can't. As
But if-
as an absolute, they can't.
But, okay, cost-wise, it'd be cheaper for them to come across the street and even pay half of it. Say you get this guy wants to tie in.
Yeah, but you
But-
put logic to it. The person may hold people over the barrel.
Well, then at that point in time, they'd have to go down. I mean,
Well,
there's got to be a reason.
That's what I'm trying to prevent, is having 5 different
Yeah.
solar lines come down the street, but that's, I think it's a good idea to say.
Well, I see it. I just see the future, and I don't feel it's in our, it wouldn't be our benefit to hold it up at this point. They can circumnavigate that.
Well, he has to go before the selectmen before anything.
Correct,
In
and,
order to get that.
yeah, so, I just see granting it at this point, because I think you could cause problems further down the road. We've done it before. We're not reinventing the wheel here. So, with that, I don't know if you have any thought on it.
No, I don't, I understand what Michael's saying, but it is what it is. It's gonna be inevitable no matter what. And as Jennifer says, if it was capable of having the system right on property, then it have to be victims anyway, Michael, right?
But you can't do it.
Right,
That's
well,
the
I mean,
problem.
I mean, Michael's concern is that they could up it to a 3, 4, 5 bedroom and, take the whole lot, so you have this monstrosity and 10,000 square feet, when there's only 1,000 square feet on it, take the whole lot, you know, will stick out like a sore thumb, because
That's
basically
not-
that's what people are doing these days. So
Well,
But it's not a Board of Health thing.
It's not our, I know,
Not our
I know.
purview.
Well, it is ours in the sense that there's sewer capacity that still needs to be addressed, and that if it's true emergency, we can access it. If it's not a true emergency, then it's not a true emergency. I mean, that's more, I just don't see it as at that threshold that you guys can do. You can present in front of the.
No, I
schools.
understand, but
I just don't see.
Even then, it might be in the sewer regulations at some point that somebody should say, if you have an existing 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom, then that's all you're allowed because you're hooked up by an emergency, but those aren't in places now either.
Yeah.
And that's not our,
Yeah,
Right.
That's
That's
up
not
to
our
the sewer
purview.
commission to
Yeah.
make that.
yeah.
that's, exactly, and that's not within our realm. And I understand it's not an emergency, but they could move in tomorrow and say, you'll be here 2 weeks from now to say, we have an emergency. And they could either do it naturally or just leave the water running and let it go.
No, they
And-
couldn't move in tomorrow because they wouldn't get it, they wouldn't have an occupancy. Because you need you need sewer to have occupancy, or you need septic capability. So they couldn't move in tomorrow.
No, they could.
You'd sign off on septic capability?
Under Title V, once you have a failed system, you have 2 years to upgrade it. They still have the obligation to maintain it, which means if they have to be there, pumping it every other day, they should.
But you're not checking that 2 year. You're not enforcing that.
Well, we send the letters out.
Once again, though, it's gonna come back.
Right.
We can avoid it, but it's still gonna be there. So I just don't,
Kicking the can down the road.
exactly, and I'm not, to me, it's not worth that. If you can see the future and you know what it is, be proactive instead of reactive further down the line. So that's where I stand. So, I mean, I take a motion, if there is a motion to approve this as an emergency sewer. Okay.
All right. So make a motion to approve these plans as presented forth by Mr. Spith from Spith Engineering.
Spath,
Spath.
close enough.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was looking at Tice. I was looking at Tice. Freudian slip.
Most likely.
That's all right.
And, yeah, so that,
All right, I'm assuming you're not gonna second. Can I second that? Second it. All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you, and good night.
Are you abstaining or opposing?
Vote.
Opposing, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Now, I know Mike's not gonna go to the selectmen's hearing on behalf of this. Frank used to do them.
Don't worry about it. Let me run it by Bangor tomorrow.
Okay. And we'll come up with a plan, because usually somebody from the Board of Health goes.
Sometimes it's been circumvented by going through Bangor.
Okay. I'll let him understand.
He seems to have special privileges.
All right, well, understand too, with the way the vote was, that should be noted, that
Oh,
a few
definitely.
times it wasn't unanimous, so
Yep,
your vote should be heard.
Thank you. Good night.
good night.
thanks.
I just was trying to be the first line of defense there. So,
Okay, well,
Continued
regs.
discussion, well regulations?
Please read what you just got. It's a lot. I found when I had to sort through a lot of materials I had to get stuff off my desk for a successor, whatever. And also, I went through some conference material that I gathered, and I found this set of model regs that seemed to be a lot easier to use, besides picking and drawing from all the different sets we had before. It's a lot more complete and in the right order. They also have some other considerations that are listed here, and then the separate page is what I'm suggesting we add to this. But if you look at the format, and there's a good definition page, There's also a good setup on enforcement and hearings and variances. There's a section like you wanted with all the setbacks in one place.
Where'd you get this one, John?
I don't know, it's one of the things I picked up at one of my conferences, so somebody must have been, had a handout section or a display or something, and I went by and grabbed it.
Swag.
I think it was at my Mass Health offices because it says October 31st, and that's usually about the time of year we go there, so.
So our game plan is gonna be to set some regulations, and then we're still gonna try to create that database of what we have, and we don't know what's out there, right?
Well, we don't know, we can't create a database over what isn't, you can create a database of what is.
Well, the water department knows. We have that list.
Yeah, we have a
The water
list.
department.
I mean, there's going to be things, as one of my notes was, everyone with existing wells must register with the Scituate Board of Health within 6 months
Yeah.
of the regs being effective, and supply the Board of Health with copies of any available documentation and testing.
Well, these people haven't been testing because there haven't been any regulations for them to test either potable or non-potable water.
No, there have been, potable water, yes, they've had to for those things, and we do have some records on those. Because they can't get a building permit if they're on a well, without showing the well's potable.
Okay.
You said you were dealing with something on Tory's Lane, like that, right?
Yeah, we're still dealing on that. First they were gonna do wells. And then I talked to the fire department, and it looked like they might have to put in a water line because they're not close enough to a hydrant. And then they just want to do one thing or the other to be able to get the permit issued so the guy can buy the property and start the building. But, it's all contingent on passing the septic, and I said, I can't pass the septic system unless I know what you're using for a water supply. Because if there's no water supply, there's no septic.
Okay, is there enough, if you do if you weren't near you could do some type of your own built-in sprinkler system, right? Could you pump up the water, have it in the tank, and then have some type of sprinkler system that would suffice for the water department?
Well, the wells always have a bladder anyway, too. You could make a bladder any size you want if you wanted to use that water, sure. I mean, there's always a bladder in a holding tank, too.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, I'm sure when the fire chief said you're not close enough to I'm sure they, you either told them you could do that, you couldn't.
How does that work? How does a house that's, say, set back from the street that's not near a fire hydrant and there are well,
They have to run the water line up and put in a hydrant.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, that's probably what that's
Right.
one of the issues there, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's why it's been back and forth on Tory's Lane. I said, not only that, he's showing, there's 2 lots and he's showing a well on either lot. And I said, you gotta prove to me that these lots are not, the wells are not overlapping each other's cone of influence. Because they could technically go dry.
Yeah. And as long as you're testing it, we don't care if they're, not that they're using pesticides and whatnot on a golf course, but it doesn't matter what is near the well as long as you are testing the well, right?
Well,
Right? I mean, you can,
Yeah.
it's kind of semantics, but it doesn't matter what's going on near that well as long as that specific well is being tested. And is there in these regulations how far wells can be from apart? What you just said, they're sucking from the same source, so how far apart do wells have to be?
Well, it's not in there, but one of the things I will be adding is that they can, lots, they can't overlap. I mean, on abutting lots, wells cannot,
So you need like 100-foot radius or something?
well, it depends on what they're drawing for water. And would be one, if it's an irrigation well, it's not as big a deal as if it's a drinking well.
And-
Because the drawdown would be different.
And we can't put a well, or are we gonna allow wells in aquifer districts?
Yeah, they're already in aquifer districts.
Well, but that's the point, is they're going down, they're sucking them,
Well, they be get, yeah, but if they're sucking it from the aquifer, it's no different than they'd be getting it from the pipe
From drinking water anyways.
yeah,
that sucks the water.
yeah, no, I'm just,
Irrigation, though, that's a different story.
Yeah, but I mean, from what I'm
And I would
hearing,
almost.
what I'm hearing so far
Yeah.
is that they do like them to have the irrigation wells, because they use a hell of a lot of water, and they charge them an arm and leg for it. They make all this money.
There's a lot of time.
Mm, That's what I'm hearing.
But I was just thinking, what you said, how the two wells are different between the potable and the irrigation, understandably, but I would think an irrigation well in the height of summer could really draw some water. I mean, that thing's, it's like opening up a spigot and just letting it go, so I mean,
well,
it's.
depends,
Well,
if they're using it all the time, you mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you take a shower, or you're washing your dishes, or you flush the toilet. Couple gallons here, couple gallons there, it's not like just leaving the spigot open and going. I mean, that could do some drawdown. But I think, you know.
Yeah, that's one of the things I wanted, I haven't got it on this page, but it's one of the things I'm gonna be adding, because,
It's almost a well is a well. Potable and irrigation, one you want tested more because
Well,
it's
the-
drinking, the other one you're putting on your lawn, so you're not as worried
well,
about it.
the other thing, if you try an irrigation well, how much how much the yield is gonna be based on the pumping and the length of it has to be pumped as well. I mean, and the thing, one of the things I want added is hydrofracturing, fracking is what they call it. I want that to have a separate approval by the director, because I want the director to know which wells have been fracked in case down the line there's some sort of pollution. So we can know that, and if we find out there's something in the aquifer or something, we can warn these people about it. I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm saying I want them to go on record as letting us know they're doing it.
How was your
Well,
well drilled?
do these
Was it
wells
fracked?
have any type of backflow preventer?
In the bladders they do, once they're coming up, yeah, there's all sorts of check valves, so yeah, they do have backflows, but
So nothing, contamination can go the other way?
nothing contaminated. The well, when I worked at the photo lab for years, we had, my boss got lucky, we had the well and we were on town water, and when the photo lab in the height of the season, on the height of the film, and we were watching, there was a lot of film, a lot of paper being processed, that water was flowing all the time. And no, if any of that, and we were circulating some of it too through resin columns, and if any of that had the chance to go back down, they wouldn't have never approved that, you know what I mean? So yeah, once it's coming in, it's not going back, there's multiple check valves.
And is there anything in here, wells can't be used for it can only be used for private use, not commercial use? I mean, you could pump it, truck a well and melt a car wash or something.
Yeah, that's just what I was thinking when you said it. I never even thought about it, but as soon as you said it, a car wash went right into my mind.
Those car washes, all these new car washes, like the ones that put next to Ocean, those are all gonna go through resin columns too. Everything's gonna be recirculated.
Well, that's that particular thing,
You could,
Well,
or
why?
you
But
could, you've got a farm.
selling bottled water.
But some of these farms, like the one over in Country Way, I mean, who's to say he couldn't drop it in and put his sprinkles out in the middle of whatever he's growing there, you know what I mean? Is that not possible? That is possible, right? If he wanted to, instead of paying the town all that money.
Well,
But that's
except
what
the
we-
guy who's growing the crops doesn't own the property.
Some of them do.
It's not-
I mean, and these are things that we can tweak along the way too, if there's issues. I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
things
I mean,
can be
our
revisited.
first thing should be that we don't run into a case where we.
That we get a good, we get,
Case where
that we establish that they
Exactly.
have to come through us, and we establish the basics, and we have good enough basics.
Mhm.
And we have a database of who is.
And in case you have noticed, this comes from the state, who wrote the original regs, and that massive guideline thing. So, I mean, you know, I think it's pretty thorough.
So that might be it right there with a couple of tweaks for.
Yeah,
Scituate.
well, that's what this is here, is some more tweaks.
Okay.
And what I'd like you to do for next time is to go over it and see if you have any questions. I mean, I already know that in addition to this, I'm gonna write this thing on cone of influence, but the other thing is I know there's a thing in the fine section where it says, not less than 10, no more than $500. Well, forget the less than 10 part, take that out, just leave it 500.
Mhm.
And, you know, nothing like having a good deterrent. And then, what was the other thing in here?
It's funny you say that. I was down some path the other day, and literally $10 fine. Jesus, cheaper than a dumpster cut. That should be one that's changed. Somebody take the sign down. So I agree with you, that fine should be, the less than $10 should be dropped.
Yeah, there's a typo on the notes page where it says recommend public water standards for initial, it should be initial testing, not a, that's because before when people had come to me with wells and we didn't have regs, what I told them for testing, I said there are some standards that do affect people's health at different levels. I said, if it was my well, what I would do, I would spend the money to have it tested to public drinking water standards. That gives me the basis for everything and tells me all the possibilities. I said, and there's some things that can be corrected with filters that will show up with those levels. But you have to know what your level is to be able to know if you can filter it and what kind of filtering you need. So it's better to, that's what I'm not going to necessarily require it, but that's what I am going to say we strongly recommend.
How much does?
But then if they wanted to there's another section in here where the state's saying it should be retested on a certain interval, and I'm saying that can be recommended. I don't think it necessarily can be required, but it has, they put it in to be required, and I agree with them.
For local boards of health.
Well, it's a
No,
policing issue.
I agree with them that it should be tested again before it transfers, so people know that they have a good drinking water supply.
We talked about that before, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. +2, I think of people that buy houses coming down from Scituate areas, which we have sewers in Scituate, but anyways, they're not used to a Title V system, and they have no idea what happens when you put the water down the pipe. So it gives them a little education with the Title V.
A lot of them don't
But the well,
understand wells
too.
there, they just go in and turn the knob and expect it to be there, they have no idea what's coming out of it.
Well, that's my point in case, that now they're getting an education on their well, and, you know, right up front, they have it tested, they know it's good when they buy it, it's good for the real estate agent, it's good for the seller, they don't have a problem coming back for anybody, it covers everybody's bases. Hey, the well's good, that's one we can check off
And
the
there's
list.
a-
Title V's good, we can check that off the list.
Yeah, the other thing that's in here, it's been in the back of my mind, but now that it's in here, it'll take care of that. They're gonna test it for radon. We do have ledge in this town, we could have radon. And that can be corrected, both via the house and via the water, so, you know, I think that's another good thing to know for people. And it's not a big test either. And the remediation for it isn't huge.
So I was gonna ask too, on that, you know, that full-blown test that you may recommend, what does a test like that just roughly go for? I mean, is it,
I don't know.
I have no idea. and I know money shouldn't be within our scope of thought, but it does make me think of,
Well,
you
that's
know,
why
it's a
I'm
couple
saying,
hundred bucks.
recommended.
Right, but, well, recommend it or make it happen, it just, you know, a couple $100 to me doesn't, to one person, it may seem like a lot of money, to another, it's not. If it gets into the thousands, then you say, you know, are we putting a further burden on that's not necessary, and I wouldn't want to do that.
But it's your drinking water, if you have young kids and you're in the house, you want that, you've got to, doesn't matter what the price is.
Believe me, I would spend the money, it wouldn't, but again,
Of course.
it's,
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a basic things that you have to test for. And then there's going to be the recommendation
Right.
that you do the public drinking water.
yeah, well, it'd be interesting, because like I say, if the price wasn't that much different, or it wasn't that high, then I'd require it, or I'd at least put my voice forward to ask for it to be required.
Well, all right, but I mean, I probably hit you some numbers.
Yeah, just a rough something from the lab, just
And the
curious.
other thing is unfortunately, the only requirement on the state books right now for testing for labs is E. coli, is coliform. So, I mean,
What? So there's no
Nope.
chemicals, pesticides,
no,
none of that?
no.
Really?
Unless you're a public drinking water supply, a residential well has no other required assurances unless there's a local regulation, which is why this is so important.
Geez, that's crazy, especially in New England, because you think of the businesses that we have in Scituate that are out in the middle of weird places. I mean, auto body, gas stations, different things that, you know, could have affected water supply in that
The
area.
industry that used to be, and I don't know how many, you know, what's in Lynn, if there's a lot of wells, or Brockton, all those, that shoe industry, that leather industry in Bedford,
Yeah.
Pawtucket, Rhode Island, the silver industry was there, I mean, that's crazy, that's just crazy.
Hanover, the ponds up there, they used to take the chemicals down from MIT and either bury them or sink them in the water, or they'd blow them up on the pond bank
No,
to disperse them, and all come down the North River.
they have some issues there, right? They have some.
Up at the fireworks factory places. Oh, yeah. But that's what they said, the colleges up there, when they got rid of stuff, they'd take it down there. And like I said, there was 3 ways of disposing it. Who knows, 55-gallon drum opens up after 50 years of being in the
Well,
water.
Gilgal just said that, you know, they used to just take the old oil and just pour it in the ground.
Yeah, dig a hole and just pour it in.
You know, the skeletons in our closet because we didn't know any
That's
better.
where it came from.
Well, that's it. It wasn't that they were meaning to hurt anything, and I understand that fully. It's just
No.
they didn't know any
We
better.
didn't know any better. It was just, this is the way we can handle this because it's, you know, now you see it, now you don't. You know, we pay for it later, but we find out, oh, that really wasn't a good idea.
Solution to pollution is dilution.
Mm-hmm, really. All right, so go over those things, and if you can think of anything more that you want to change or you want to add, you know, we can talk about that next time. But if that's the case, then we can button this up next time, make the changes, make the additions. And then what I would do is probably send it to Water Resources, the Water Department, Conservation, and then I have a buddy who's a hydrogeologist. I'd see if I could get him to be nice and take a quick look at it for me.
And then
And then we could,
post it.
and then we could go to public hearing, you know, based if they recommend any changes, see how we feel about it.
Hmm.
And then, you know, make the changes if that's what we want to do, and then we can open a public hearing and get it
Who's
done.
this guy's title? Hydro what?
Geologist.
Oh, hydrogeologist. I could probably spell that so I could argue with him. Kidding.
And who's in charge of,
He happens to be a board member in a different town.
Well, there you go.
who's in charge of creating and administering that database there? So once this is all said and done, you reach out to everybody who lives in town and says, are you on a well, are you using your well, blah, blah, blah. And that's part of administrative work. Is that gonna be the BOH, or is that gonna be the water department? They already have a partial list, but we saw that list, and there's 20 people on it, you know, there's way more than 20 wells.
Well, what we will do is we will put an ad in the Ledger, or do an article, or in the Ledger and or the Mariner.
Right.
I mean, we're not gonna beat the bush down, we don't have the personnel for that.
Right, well,
And what we'll do is the same thing we do with the water and the sewer department, when we have questions about water and sewer, is we talk to each other,
yeah.
and we exchange information. And, you know, we do that very well. I mean, everyone's willing to help each other out, so that's not a problem.
Well, the thing too, whatever letter that is, it's gotta be explained properly that, you know, this isn't a regulation just to write a regulation. We're trying to protect your well. And if we don't know you have a well, we can't protect it. So this is in your best interest to come forward.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. So, you know,
Yeah.
some people I think would get scared or nervous or something for whatever
Well, some
reason.
people charge them to come in and register their wells, and we're not even charging them. We're just telling them, please come in.
Yeah, we just wanna know.
Give us your information.
Right, right. And I agree with that. It shouldn't be a charge or a tax or a penalty, however you want to look at it. No, it's for the protection of the town and the individual right.
Yeah. Yeah.
If
and
you- If you have an
we're-
illegal well and your neighbor goes to put a legal one in, the neighbor's probably gonna have precedence if you don't say anything. So protect yourself.
Okay, are we
That could be the
good?
next well court case right there.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, man. That good? Any other business? Good, good. Everybody's good? Adjourn?
Second.